Good evening, boa tarde. Excelentíssima Senhora Cônsul-Geral de Portugal em Goa, Doutora Isabel Raimundo, seja muito bem-vinda. Caro Sr. Diretor do Centro de Língua Portuguesa em Goa, Sr. Delfim Correia da Silva, dear friends, welcome to Fundação Oriente. My words today go entirely to the team at the University of Aveiro, Portugal. Professor Susana Sardo, Professor Álvaro Souza, and Eduardo Falcão. We are here today due to work that you have been doing over the years. When work is done in a team, sometimes it's unfair to individualize. But I need to mention the key person in this project, Professor Susana Sardo. Susana started thinking and working on this project 30 years ago, when she received the first manuscripts from the Agapito hands. For years, she invests time and money to keep the documentation in a safe place. Susana conceived the idea, worked hard to get some support, and above all, never gave up moving forward with this project. In addition to the outstanding work done by Susana, this exhibition had the collaboration of several people and entities. Firstly, Agapito's family. Your support was very important during all this process. Secondly, the Gulbenkian Foundation for the financial support to digitize the manuscripts. Finally, Álvaro and Eduardo. I could see during the last 10 days your patience and commitment, which are reflected in this brilliant exhibition. So, thank you very much for bringing us more knowledge, culture, and music. Agora, Susana, umas breves palavras só em português, porque de quando me vês também convém falar na língua materna. Bill Gates, quer se goste ou não, é uma das personalidades mais marcantes do século XXI. Ele disse e escreveu há alguns anos atrás algo como isto. Não sei precisar ao certo, mas foi algo como isto. Ao olhar para o novo século, referindo-se ao século XXI, os líderes serão aqueles que capacitam os outros. E trouxe esta citação, a meu ver, é uma das principais missões dos professores universitários ou dos investigadores. Através da sua investigação, através do seu trabalho, trazer a todos nós mais e novo conhecimento. Por essa razão, eu sei que o trabalho foi árduo, não está de todo concluído, mas queria fazer este agradecimento pessoal, porque estamos aqui hoje, sou suspeito, mas nesta bonita sala, com esta bonita exposição, e o vosso esforço vem nos trazer informação de muito valor acrescentado. Portanto, muitos parabéns novamente por isto. Eu tinha que dizer isto em português. Now, I would like to invite the General Council of Portugal in Goa.
Good evening to all. Mr. Paulo Goan, our host, the Director of the Fundação Oriente delegation in India. Dr. Delfim Correia da Silva, Director of the Centro de Língua Portuguesa, Instituto Camões, in Goa. Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, Let me begin by thanking Mr. Paulo Gomes, Director of Fundação Oriente in India, for inviting me to be present at this event and address a few words. I congratulate him for putting together this important exhibition. I also congratulate Professor Susana Sardo and the Institute of Ethnomusicology at the Universidade de Aveiro for having conducted and completed this project with so much perseverance and dedication. The documentation of musical traditions related to the Catholic community in Goan, carried out with most care and attention by Mr. Agapito de Miranda during his lifetime, deserves this major achievement which we testify today. From now on, his collection can be seen and explored very easily by all through the means of modern communication. It is indeed very important to share with the world one of the most enchanted local traditions of this territory, so they cannot be forgotten, serving the common purpose of enriching the distinctive identity of the Goan and Indo-Portuguese culture in the context of the vibrant Indian culture. I would like to add that the memory of traditions is as important as the gathering of new elements brought by all those who develop sentimental or other links with Goa, along with the contribution of those cultures with some affinities with both India and Portugal, such as the Portuguese-speaking countries, spread across 4 continents. In fact, Goa has always been a place where different people and cultures meet, open to the world, and so it should remain in the future, in a spirit of tolerance and harmony between ethnic groups, cultures, and religions. Thank you very much to all.
Thank you all for coming. Dr. Paulo Gomes, thank you for your kind words. Dr. Isabel Raimundo, our General Counsel in Goa, and Dr. Delphine Correia da Silva, I don't know where you are, and all dear friends, and also the family of Agapito, which are the most important people for me now to be here. So I can share some ideas, and I can share this work that we have been doing during so many years. Well, this talk is called Agapito de Miranda, Goan Music and Culture Aficionado. Aficionado is a word that we use also in English, in Portuguese, in Spanish, and in many other languages. The ethnomusicologist Etty Malcolmson defined aficionado as, and I quote, non-professional or amateur hobbyists who possesses remarkable specialist knowledge and often display affective sentiment for a subject or activity. Akin to amateurs and fans, aficionados have been allied to sentiment. Etymologically, aficionado derives from the Latin affectio, to affect or influence. A relational affective link is implied between aficionado and their knowledge. Aficionados are both affected by and affect their subject. End of quote. The presence of aficionados linked to music is very common all over the world, where material culture is prioritized, because we have many cultures where material culture is not prioritized. For example, the indigenous cultures in Brazil or in other indigenous places in Latin America or even in the African continent. These collectors, they often define, these aficionados are often defined as collectors because they often spend their lives collecting objects such as records or discs, radios, music scores, books, instruments, or newspaper articles, among other objects. Agapito de Miranda was a collector, but also an aficionado. I met Agapito de Miranda in 1992 after many unsuccessful attempts to meet him during my first stay in Goa in 1987, when I spent 3 months here doing preliminary work for my doctorate. In 1992, I returned for a long stay, and I was very surprised when I received a message from him through his daughter Lisette saying that he wanted to see me. At the time, I was living at Veiga Coutinho's house in Margão, and I always remember when a boy came with a message addressed to Father Lúcio de Veiga Coutinho. We can see him there with me 30 years ago. Addressed to Father Lúcio, confirming the date of our first meeting, October 25, 1992. He was 81 years old at the time. The proposal of the meeting was to interview a man I knew as one of the most active composers of the 20th century in Goa, and also an important collector of many traditions related to music, but also to other expressions of Goan life. I already knew some of his publications, namely some articles and a small book on Mandor. Agapito had been diagnosed with glaucoma 20 years early, and by 1992 he was completely blind. Also, he had some hearing problems, and since he couldn't read lips due to his blindness, our communication wasn't entirely smooth. However, our first meeting was very emotional for me, and I could immediately see his enormous commitment to music in Goa based on a strong passion, especially for Mandor. It was immediately clear that he was born into a strong musical environment where the whole family used to make music. This is some pictures of his house in Lotlin that I visited some years ago with a very good friend from Goa. It was clear that he was born in a strong musical environment. His father, António Salvador Crisóstomo Caetano Xavier de Miranda, was a doctor from Lotubim who also played the violin and flute, probably the flute we have in our exhibition today. In the family, his aunt Efigis Aurora Itelvina de Miranda, probably the lady that you see there, who also played the guitar, was, according to him, an encyclopedia of Goan music. He used to say during the interview that she had a lot of music in her head. It's very interesting the way he defined the end. During this first interview, Agapito mentioned many times that he learned many Mandé listening to his aunt singing. He also mentioned that he used to visit other ladies in their homes, listening to the Mandé they performed for him, and then return to his home and write it down in scores. In fact, this first interview became very important to understand the method that Agapito used to collect the music that gave rise to the manuscripts that he wrote, but about which I had no idea at that time. So I only knew that he was a very important person in the musical scene of Goa. Agapito used to go by bicycle to visit people from the villages of Lotubim, Puturim, Raya, and other places, mainly in South Street. In some cases, he copied by hand the notebooks where mainly the women recorded the lyrics of the Mandé they sang, what we would now call their playlist. After that, he would have them sing to him while he took some notes. As Agapito didn't have a recorder, the way he recorded the Mandó he learned from people was by listening, memorizing, and transcribing by heart whenever he got home. What is very interesting about his collection of musical transcriptions is that he recorded several versions of the same Mandó, for example, naming the author of each version. This gives us a very important picture of how careful and detail-oriented he was. We need to place ourselves in the middle of the 20th century, where many origin myths were at the center of the knowledge scene. Among folklorists and other local researchers interested in oral music, the existence of an original version of each song, in the sense of its authentic version, was very, very important. However, Agapito had a different point of view on this subject, and it was also important for him to record the different versions he found of the different songs. In that sense, he was quite advanced for his time. On that first visit, he often said, and I quote, "You are going to see my compositions. You are going to see my compilations." And after 40 minutes of the interview, when we were almost finished, he asked his son-in-law to bring the index and the first volume of his work. I didn't know about the huge job he did. So seeing the index was very moving for me, not just because it was a sort of a calling card for a larger work, but because as an object it was fabulous, fully handwritten and fully constructed and sewn by hand. I was also surprised to see on the cover of the book, "Caution, do not lend to anyone except Father António da Costa." Então, tela, nunca emprestada a pessoa alguma, exceto ao Padre António da Costa. My second visit to Agapito took place on November 7, 1992, once again accompanied by Lisette and Miguel. His wife, Eusébia, was also present, and his grandchildren, such as Lucelle, who is also here, who was a beautiful little boy at the time, always jumping. And in this second interview, we focus on defining Goan music, mandó, and the way in which mandó is or was important as a central Goan repertoire, especially for the Catholic community. We also looked into his activity as a musician and composer. He told how he learned music, first learning solfege and violin at the parish school, and later piano with Lusitano Rodrigues, one of the best-known Mestre das Noivas, bride's master, who also published many music booklets with transcriptions. At the end of the interview, he called his family and asked me to keep his manuscripts with me and try to publish them in Portugal. There were 6 volumes at the time, according to him, and after several attempts to publish his work on music in Goa, which is also confirmed by the correspondence that we can find in his personal archive between different Goan institutions, he considered that because a large part of the manuscripts was written in Portuguese, it would be possible to obtain funds from a Portuguese institution. It was a big surprise for me and, of course, a huge responsibility. I was a PhD student at the time. Actually, I had a scholarship from the Salvadorians. So, carried the manuscript with me, and I carried the manuscript with me, and for 3 years I tried to convince many Portuguese institutions to help me in this mission. Unfortunately, Agapito de Miranda died in 1995, and the following year I traveled to Goa with the manuscripts to return them to the family. However, their sons told me, and I quote, "My father trusted you, so we do too. Please make every effort to publish his work." So the history of the manuscripts after 1996 has been an ongoing concern for me. For many years before I had my own safe at home, I tried to keep the manuscripts in a bank because I was afraid something might happen to them. But I was also pressured by the fact that I had a considerable part of Agapito's life under my responsibility. Thus, in 2017, the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation opened a call for funds to treat archives of Portuguese influence based on literature. I thought that maybe it could be a possibility for me if I grounded the project very well. Thus, I titled the project The Sung Word in Goa through the work of Agapito de Miranda, because word is related to literature, so maybe Fundação Gulbenkian was happy with it. It was nothing for music, but let's see. So, on the 7th July 2017, I finally received a positive decision. Here is the letter. From the Carlos de Gulbenkian Foundation, granting 7,000 euros for the project. This money would make it possible to digitize the complete collection of manuscripts in high quality, grant a 6-month scholarship to a doctoral student to carry out preliminary research and organize them before digitation, prepare a digital platform to host the digital documentation, and prepare the exhibition that we have finally opened today. It was supposed to open in December 2020, but we all know how the pandemic has postponed everything in our lives. Coincidentally, 15 days after receiving the good news from the Gulbenkian Foundation, I was invited to discuss Eduardo Reis Falcão's master's thesis in a master program in heritage at the University of Porto. At the end of the academic session, Eduardo approached me, sharing his desire to develop a doctorate in music in Goa under my guidance. And this was the perfect date. Eduardo is there. I told him immediately, I have a scholarship for you. I said, Eduardo is half Goan, so everything seemed perfect. In January 2018, we traveled to Goa together and started a wonderful collaboration with the Agapito's family using shared research practices to develop research about their father's work. I was trying to find a picture with Eduardo. But Eduardo is the photographer of our team, so he's never in the pictures. So it was difficult. So we have this, but you are there because you are making the photo. Coincidentally, so this collaboration has been extremely fruitful. Working together allowed us to understand that Agapito de Miranda was much more than a musician, composer, and collector. As we can see through this exhibition, he was also a photographer and actually built his own dark room to reveal his photographic experiences. Most of the photographs that we see in this exhibition are a kind of selfies that Agapito took himself. And other photos were quite interesting and very out of the box for their time, like portraying his wife's pregnancy, for example. But or a kind of intimacy with her. So this was very avant-garde, we may say. But he was also a painter. Some of his paintings are presented in tiles on one of the walls of the exhibition, a work that was made by our colleague and my good friend Alvaro Souza, and an ethnographer, so he was also an ethnographer. Its collection of music-related manuscripts includes 5,000 folios with 1,400 musical transcriptions containing musical scores, Konkani lyrics, and ethnographic notes in Portuguese. This also includes an index where each musical transcription is identified with correspondence to the book and the page where you can find the transcription. All of these books you can see here in this exhibition. The ethnographic notes are rich sources of musical life in Goa. They are Agapito's version, of course, but all ethnography is, in a certain way, the result of the ethnographer's way of seeing the world. The Argentine epistemologist Walter Mignolo says all knowledge has its place of enunciation, which means that all knowledge is in fact situated. And we cannot read Agapito's work without inscribing it in the history of Goa, in the history of India, and in the history of the world, which also includes Portugal. We can see this in the timeline that was designed with a lot of patience by Alvaro, and with strong collaboration of Eduardo. Thus, the milestones of his biography on the timeline of this exhibition always follow the history of the different contexts that mark the history of Goa. Finally, we cannot understand the musical contribution of Agapito Miranda without his inclusion in what Eduardo Falcão defines as the musicology of Goa, which includes José Pereira, Micael Martins, António Costa, Lourdino Barreto, Lúcio Rodrigues, and many others. Since 1866, when the first publication dedicated to Goan music was printed in Goa by Miguel Vicente de Abreu, I'm referring to the local journal O Ramaitim, hundreds of other publications that also include scores have appeared in Goa. Some of them are just transcriptions or collections of scores, like those published by Lusitano Rodrigues, the Mestre Rebecco of Agapito. In this case, it was a Mestre piano. Others include some ethnographic notes, but none are as exhaustive as what we have before us. Agapito was a true aficionado. He left us a legacy that constitutes one of the most important sources for the study of music in Goa in the 20th century, especially with regard to Catholic traditions. Because of his love of mandol, it's so beautiful, he told me many times in the interview. Agapito was affected by it, and at the same time, he affected mandol as a songwriter, researcher, and collector. And his work is now open to the world, and he will be continue to do so. We will have a platform that you can explore after this opening. So the platform will be here. It is settled at the University of Aveiro, but we are going to share it with the Central Library, where hopefully all these manuscripts will be deposited and open to all to see, not to touch, because they are really old. I like to end this lecture with his own words. When I asked him, because of this idea of being an aficionado, when I asked him, why did you dedicate yourself so much to mandol? And he answered, the mandol is so beautiful. What do you want me to say? It was a natural inclination. I've been telling Father Loreno de Souza, if you want to know if I'm alive or dead, sing a good mandol by my side. If I start moving, then I'm alive. If not, you can take and leave me in the world. So allow me, before I finish, to address some well-deserved acknowledgements. Firstly, to the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation, without which it would be impossible to obtain fundings for this project. Then to the University of Aveiro and the two research centers, the Institute of Ethnomusicology, to which I belong, and the Institute of Design, to which my colleague, Professor Álvaro Souza, belongs. He conceived and taught with us this exhibition, to which he committed himself and was strongly dedicated. The two research centers mentioned above complemented the project costs, which, as you can imagine, were much higher than those granted by the Fundação Gulbenkian. I want to deeply thank Eduardo Falcão for appearing at the right time and for having embraced this project with me in such a professional and exemplary way. Thank you, Eduardo. A huge thank to Fundação Oriente for hosting this exhibition and for, in the person of its director, Dr. Paulo Gomes, having opened the doors for us day and night during the last 10 days. Without your help and complicity, it would not have been possible to get here. Finally, I want to thank the Miranda family for trusting me as their father did, and for
speaking English. Posso, claro, nossa fulana. depois este Eduardo, de Álvaro Souza, a pessoa certa, e todos juntos, a nação ali é correta. I will speak in English, if you don't mind, and a little bit in Portuguese, because the talking is very loud. They have been a long way, but a fruitful one, by, as we were fondly called, has been a long way, but a fruitful one, by, as fondly called our father Agapito Miranda, loved what he did and did it with passion. His works are so surprisingly diverse that they are bound to spring surprises even now. Pai had one theme that trend to his works, documenting Goan folklore and culture for posterity. His focus was the documentation of Mandal and its various nuances, but he left no stone unturned to also talk of other aspects of Goan culture like the Puri Dalo, etc. Goan culture for Pai was meant to exist only in the pure form. While he appreciated creativity, he rejected attempts to interfere with the very essence of Goan culture. His manuscripts speak volumes about this and his other ideas. Today, they have reached that pinnacle. It is time when Pai's work will be available to all of us at a click of a button. A project that was started in the 1990s while he still walked this earth has now seen fruition. We look up with both pride and excitement to the treasures that truly belong to Goa. The treasures written by a forgotten devotee of Goan music is now going to be remembered forever. The digital era has brought in some wonderful moments. Pai's work now belongs to any individual or group that is picked by Goan music and culture. We are happy to dedicate his works as a bouquet of love from Goa and Goans to culture enthusiasts and researchers from world over. What triggered the project way back in 1990s was a meeting with Professor Susanna Saad. Though there were many difficulties to encounter and many hurdles to jump over, Professor Susanna kept going with the sole goal of giving this rich heritage not just to Goa, but to the world. And a few years ago, Professor Susanna teamed up with a young researcher of Goan origin, Devotee Trace Parkam. This, along with the support of Unasa Kalush Gulbenkin and a team from the University of Avail, including Professor Albert Souza, Portugal, along with the Institute of Etymology Research Center of Music and Dance, ensured that Pi's works have got their well-deserved due. Our family is eternally grateful to them all for giving the world this rare opportunity of accessing rich literature of art right at their fingertips. Pai knew and announced from deep within his heart, that Goans and music were inseparable, even explained. Goans grow up cherishing music from their birth through the whole lifespan of their existence in the world. Living this Goan virtue right up to the day of his death on 18 January 1995, Pai was inseparable from the Gumon and his exuberant love for the Mando and the true flavors of Goan music. He also was strongly believed that true lovers and enthusiasts of the previous legacy of our ancestors should not waste time, not slacken their efforts to obtain the needed elements from the existing custodians of the older generation, nearing the end of their pilgrimage on this world. He was adamant that the tradition should be carried down to the next generation, and each generation has a duty to make sure this happens. The digitalization of his work really fulfilled his cherished dreams. I would like to call upon the youngsters of today, take this forward, be the custodians of our culture, find the true nuance of our Goan ethos, and pass it down to the generation to come. That would fulfill Pai's vision for that I dare say music infested Goa.
Sim, sim.
Aroma do Orient, please don't laugh. Because Portuguese, I'm little, I understand, I can feel for myself. But when I give a speech, maybe I can Aroma do Oriente está estrela resplandecente, terra de praias e ribeira. Goa é conhecido por muitas frases afetuosas, mas a música e a cultura goesa é aquela mistura única onde encontra as melhores do Oriente e Ocidente, que agrada aos sentidos culturais. Meu pai, o falecido Agapito de Miranda, dedicou apaixonadamente à pesquisa da música e da cultura goesa e deixou para a posteridade alguns aspectos interessantes da mesma. Agora temos a versão digital das suas obras, graças à professora Susana Sartre e Eduardo dos Reis Falcão, juntamente com a Fundação Calouste Gulbenkian, Universidade da Aveiro e o Instituto de Etnomusicologia, Centro de Investigação em Música e Dança e Fundação Oriente, enquanto falamos dessa mudança para acessar informações o toque de um botão, tenho um pedido sincero a fazer, especialmente aos jovens de hoje. Agora temos um lindo presente dado ao mundo. Vamos levar isso por gerações. Devemos fazer da cultura e da música goesa uma fonte de diversão, um tesouro de informação e um buquê do amor deste lugar exótico que todos nós chamamos com muito carinho. A nossa querida Goa. Viva Goa!
Duriya Chalari Sundri Macharuari Duriya Chalari Sundri So
Susanna Sar, let's start it after completing the research through Mr. Eduardo de Reis Falcão. Today, the exhibition has been opened and all his work will be available on the net from today onwards. Justice has been inaugurated and it has been released today. So everyone will be able to know who is Agapito Miranda, because he did research right from the 50s and he was alone in the house, in our house. He was alone writing and going to the libraries, collecting. So he has got a collection of Mando and Dekni and Dhrupods and anything to do with music, Goan music. So Professor Susanna Sar decided. So she decided that let the world know how much of the research has been done on the Goan music, not just the Manda, but whatever music he did. But his work on Manda and how many types of different Manda you can sing, everything was much before any book was published. But at that time, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, there was not much of maturity. So he kept on, he knew music. He used to play the violin, he used to play the flute, he used to play the piano, and he was an exponent in how to play the Goan. And the Mando festivals, a few Mando festivals, he participated with us, and he was the Devotee, the one who raised the Goan. So he was exponent because he has shown how many beats are there. The 6 beats in the Mando, and how one is silent, and the 5th how it is the most prominent. All this work that many others may have taken the credit, but patiently they have done the research, has been opened to the public from today. After the research, because the original manuscripts were given to Professor Susanna Sar, a professor in the University of Hawaii, in 1992. He died in 1995, and after almost more than 30 years, he is seeing the light of the day, because the one who has done the research under her guidance is Mr. Eduardo de Reis Falcão, of own origin, but born in Jerusalem.
This is a working on project, so I have met Susanna and the family since 2018. So it's a long journey that now we have the fruits. It's a wonderful work, and we would be able to do all this work without the family. So it was very important to meet the family every week. There was a period of time that every week I was there at their place, and we were talking, and each time we were getting the trust of each other, and we were talking more about music and the music of Goa. And I think because my father is Goan, so they trust even more in me. And this is somehow how the project has developed.
So you are happy finally?
Yes. But this is just one output. Still have the PhD thesis now out.
You want to ask anything? Raul Miranda.
Yeah. Tell us about this.
It was a long journey for us, and we had full faith in Susanna. Susanna came in 1990 with my father, and my father died in 1995. But when she brought the books back, we told, please, my father had full faith in you, and so too we have full faith. And only she took my plate, back the books, and today we see the fruit of that. And she really worked for because you need a lot of money and everything. So it got books and wherever, got Eduard and all, and we were sitting together all this time for this occasion, not for the function, but to put in order everything for them. So we had a lot of meetings, please come home, and especially Eduard. She had given the work of research to Eduard. So his
father was working on this.
Yeah.
You all as his sons.
Yeah.
Because of the immediate legacy.
Yeah.
Were you aware of what was happening, what history he was creating?
Yeah. All the time he was doing writing. As I was saying with my mother, my wife, my children, and myself, and we had two patients. Sudan was sent by another person was sent by transport to the Goan. That gentleman was referred to by Padus, took the book, got it printed in archive. Now the transport will go with because my files were entire different. So this transportation which was in Goan and music and that was his specialty. Yeah, music and that was various instruments. We had to change them out in the house came had to be broken and went to the flag. Then what happened? Some of them had some instruments, fingers, and all that we had kept in the one of the housing barrier. Then everything was written up. Where you keep in the house you are staying and then the flag you are staying. That was it. But whatever we showcase, especially for this and that's my wife and we made it in our name both of my wife I wanted to part of the UK region gets in at home what I had of the UK region there are here okay today we visited here also and he also took over this and we are going to